Kang Woo-jin stood at the center of the massive Galactic Council chamber. His hands shook slightly as he held the formal document. Around him, thousands of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose up like a giant bowl. Some had 6 arms. Others looked like walking crystals, and a few floated in the air with no visible bodies at all. The noise in the chamber was terrible. Different species made different sounds when they talked. The Valorians roared like angry lions. The Nethri made high singing sounds that hurt human ears. The Kythera clicked and buzzed like giant insects. All of these sounds mixed together into something that made Woo-jin's head hurt. "Silence," shouted High Counselor Vextar. He was a Valorian, which meant he looked like a 10-foot-tall bear with too many teeth. His voice boomed across the chamber, like thunder. "The human will speak now." Woo-jin took a deep breath. He had practiced this speech many times, but his heart still beat fast. Behind him sat the other human representatives. Dr. Park So-min, their best scientist, gave him a small nod. She looked calm, but Woo-jin could see the anger in her eyes. For 5 years, the humans had been warning about strange energy readings from the edge of the galaxy. Something was wrong out there. The sensors showed patterns that did not make sense. Dr. Park had studied the data for months. She was sure that something dangerous was coming. But every time the humans brought this to the council, the other species laughed. The Valorians said humans were too young to understand space. The Nethri sang songs that meant foolish children in their language. Even the Kythera, who were usually kind to humans, had stopped listening. Last week was the final insult. The humans had asked for ships and resources to investigate the strange readings. They had prepared charts and graphs and scientific reports. Dr. Park had explained everything in simple terms that even the proudest species could understand. The council had voted against them. Again. Worse than that, Counselor Vextar had stood up and made a speech about how humans needed to know their place in the galaxy. He said humans were like small children who saw monsters in dark corners where there were none. That was when Woo-jin decided that enough was enough. "Members of the Galactic Council," Woo-jin began. His voice carried clearly through the chamber, thanks to the translation devices. "I stand before you today to deliver an important message from humanity." Some of the aliens leaned forward. Others continued making noise. The crystal-like Nethri began to glow brighter, which meant they were paying attention. "For 37 years, humanity has been a member of this council," Woo-jin continued. "We have followed your laws. We have paid our taxes. We have sent our young people to fight in your wars. We have shared our discoveries and our technology." A few Valorians roared softly. This sounded like approval, but Woo-jin knew better. They were mocking him. "In return, you have treated us like servants. When we speak, you do not listen. When we offer help, you refuse. When we warn of danger, you laugh." Woo-jin's voice grew, stronger. "You have made it clear that you do not see us as equals." Now the chamber was getting quieter. Even the proudest species could hear the anger in the human's voice. "Today, that ends." Woo-jin held up the document. "I am here to formally announce that humanity is leaving the Galactic Council. We withdraw from all treaties. We cancel all trade agreements. We end all military cooperation." The chamber exploded with noise. Valorians roared in anger. Nethri sang sharp, angry songs. The Kythera buzzed so loudly it sounded like a swarm of angry bees. Other species made sounds that had no human comparison. Vextar stood up, his massive form casting a shadow over the human section. "You cannot do this," he roared. "Your species is too small, too weak to survive alone." Woo-jin looked up at the giant alien without fear. "Watch us," he said simply. Behind him, Dr. Park smiled for the first time in weeks. She had always known this day would come. The other species thought humans were weak because they were young. They thought humans were stupid because they asked questions. They thought humans were worthless because they cared about things like fairness and helping others. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The formal withdrawal process took 3 hours. Each human colony had to be contacted. Each trade agreement had to be officially ended. Each military unit had to be recalled. The Council tried to make it difficult, but humans had been preparing for this day for months. Admiral Lee Tae-ho waited in orbit above the Council world with a fleet of human ships. As soon as the withdrawal was complete, he began giving orders. Every human settlement in the galaxy received the same message: pack everything. We're leaving. What happened next amazed even the humans themselves. In less than 24 hours, millions of humans across hundreds of worlds began moving. They used technology that most other species did not fully understand. Jump drives that could move ships instantly across vast distances. The other species had always wondered why humans were so secretive about their jump drive technology. Now they understood. Humans had been preparing for this day since they first joined the Council. Dr. Park watched from the observation deck as human ships appeared around every major colony. The evacuation was happening faster than anyone thought possible. Entire cities were being packed up and moved. Factories were being taken apart piece by piece. Even the orbital stations were being towed away. "Where will we go?" asked Dr. Kim Byung-ho, one of the younger scientists. Dr. Park pointed toward the viewing screen, where stars could be seen beyond the edge of the galaxy. "Out there," she said. "Away from all of this. We'll build something new. Something better." The alien species watched in shock as humanity disappeared. Ships vanished into jump space faster than sensors could track them. Within a week, every human settlement was empty. The only signs they had ever been there were the empty buildings and the abandoned trade routes. Counselor Vextar stood in his private chamber, looking out at the space where a human trade station had been just days before. For the first time in his long life, he felt something like worry. The galaxy suddenly seemed much quieter without the humans, and much more dangerous. But it would be months before anyone realized just how dangerous it had become. Captain Yoon Da-eun sat in the command chair of the research ship Transcendence. Around her, the bridge hummed quietly, with the sounds of working computers and life support systems. Through the main viewing screen, she could see the spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy spinning slowly in the distance. 6 months had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council. 6 months since they had jumped away from their old homes and started building new ones in the space between galaxies. It was lonely out here, but it was peaceful. No more council meetings. No more demands for taxes and tribute. No more being treated like children. "Captain," called Lieutenant Park Min-soo from the communication station. "I'm picking up something strange from the galaxy." Yoon walked over to look at his screen. Lines of data scrolled past faster than she could read them. "What am I looking at?" "The communication traffic from the Council species," Park explained. "It's down by 30% from normal levels, and the patterns are odd." Yoon frowned. "Odd how?" Park pointed to a graph on his screen. "See these spikes? That's usually when the trading fleets report in. But they're reporting problems. Lost ships, failed navigation systems, cargo that disappears during transport. Equipment failures happen," Yoon said. But she did not sound convinced. "This much? This often?" Park shook his head. "Something is wrong, Captain." Meanwhile, in the new human shipyards orbiting the planet New Hope, engineer Kim Min-ho was seeing similar problems. He stood in the main control room, surrounded by screens showing data from across the galaxy. His job was to monitor the old human territories and make sure no one was stealing human technology. But what he was seeing made no sense. "Dr. Choi," he called to the elderly scientist working at a nearby station. "Come look at this." Dr. Choi Ye-jin walked over, her white hair tied back in a neat bun. She had been studying space for 40 years before humanity left the Council. If anyone could understand what was happening, it was her. "The background energy readings from the galaxy," Kim said, pointing at his screen. "They're changing." Choi put on her glasses and studied the data carefully. "This is unusual," she said after a long moment. "These patterns have been stable for thousands of years. What could cause them to shift?" Kim had been asking himself the same question. Maybe it has something to do with the humans leaving? Choi gave him a sharp look. "That's impossible. We're just one species among hundreds. We can't affect something as large as an entire galaxy." But even as she said it, Choi felt doubt creeping into her mind. She had spent decades studying galactic physics. She knew things about space and energy that most people could not understand. And lately, she had been thinking about some very disturbing possibilities. Back in the Milky Way, the first real disasters were starting to happen. On the edge of Valorian space, a mining operation called Red Rock Station stopped sending reports. The station had been working normally for 50 years, pulling rare metals from an asteroid field. Then one day their communications simply stopped. A Valorian rescue ship was sent to investigate. When they arrived, they found something impossible. The station was still there, but it was completely empty. No signs of fighting, no signs of evacuation. The workers had simply vanished. Worse yet, the asteroids around the station were moving wrong. They spun and tumbled in patterns that defied physics. Some rocks passed through each other like ghosts. Others exploded for no reason at all. The rescue team leader, a veteran warrior named Gorax, had never seen anything like it. He ordered his ship to leave immediately, but they had trouble finding their way out of the asteroid field. The navigation systems kept showing different readings. Space itself seemed to be changing around them. Similar reports came from other parts of the galaxy. The Astari Trade Federation, which controlled the major shipping routes, started losing entire convoys. Ships would enter hyperspace and never arrive at their destinations. Some were found later, drifting empty in normal space with their crews missing. The most disturbing reports came from the Eternal Watchers. These were the oldest known species in the galaxy, so ancient that most people thought they were myths. They rarely communicated with younger species, preferring to watch and study from a distance. But now they were broadcasting urgent warnings on all frequencies. Their messages were hard to understand, full of concepts that did not translate well. But the basic meaning was clear. Something fundamental was breaking down. Dr. Choi received these reports in her laboratory on New Hope. She had been working day and night, trying to understand what was happening. The data she was collecting painted a terrifying picture. "It's not possible," she muttered to herself as she studied the latest readings. "This can't be happening." But the evidence was right there in front of her. The galaxy was becoming unstable. Not just politically or economically, but physically. The basic forces that held space together were weakening. She thought about the theories she had studied as a young student. Ideas about consciousness and reality that most scientists dismissed as fantasy. What if those theories were true? What if thinking beings actually affected the universe around them just by existing? It sounded crazy, but the numbers did not lie. The breakdowns were happening faster in areas where humans used to live. The most stable regions were the ones that still had large populations of thinking species. And now, with humans gone, there was a gap. A hole in the galactic consciousness that was growing bigger every day. Choi called an emergency meeting with the other human leaders. Admiral Lee Tae-ho attended by video link from his flagship. President Seo Jin-woo joined from the capital city of New Seoul. Dr. Park So-min was there in person along with several other scientists and engineers. "I need to share something with all of you," Choi began. "Something that might explain what's happening in the galaxy." She showed them her data. The energy patterns, the communication breakdowns, the strange accidents. She explained her theory about consciousness affecting reality. "You're saying that thinking beings actually help hold the universe together?" Admiral Lee asked. "More than that," Choi replied. "I think humans were doing more than our fair share. Our brains work differently than most species. We're more creative, more adaptable. We solve problems in ways that other species can't or won't try." "And now that we're gone," President Seo asked. "Now the galaxy is falling apart," Choi said simply. The room fell silent. Everyone was thinking about the implications of what she had said. If she was right, then humanity's departure had not just been a political statement. It had been an ecological disaster. "What do we do?" Dr. Park asked finally. Choi looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I think we're about to find out just how much the galaxy really needs us." Outside the meeting room, Through the large windows that looked out into space, the distant galaxy continued to spin. But if you looked carefully, if you knew what to watch for, you could see that its light was getting dimmer. Something was dying out there, and humanity was the only cure. General Oh Sung-woo stood in the command center of New Seoul, watching dozens of screens showing information from across the galaxy. Each screen told a story of disaster. Red lights blinked warnings. Alarm sounds filled the air. The galaxy was dying, and it was dying fast. "Sir," called Sergeant Nam Yuri from her communication station, "we're getting more emergency signals from the Council species." Oh walked over to look at her screen. Messages were pouring in from all over the galaxy. The proud Valorians were asking for help. The mysterious Nethri were broadcasting distress calls. Even species that humans had never heard of were sending desperate pleas. "What are they saying?" Oh asked. Nam looked up at him with worried eyes. "They're saying that space itself is breaking down. Hyperspace lanes are collapsing, entire star systems are going dark. And sir, some of them are blaming us." Oh was not surprised. When things went wrong, people always looked for someone to blame. But he was also getting reports that some species were starting to understand the truth. The Kithara Queen had sent a personal message to humanity's leaders, apologizing for the Council's treatment and begging for help. It was too little, too late. In her laboratory, Dr. Lim Hae-won worked frantically to understand what was happening. She was humanity's best expert on how galaxies worked, and the data she was seeing terrified her. "It's like watching a giant machine break down," she explained to her assistant, Dr. Kim Tae-young. "Every part depends on every other part. When one piece fails, it puts stress on everything else." "But what started the breakdown?" Kim asked. Lim pointed to a complex diagram on her computer screen. "Us, or rather us leaving. I think conscious minds actually help keep reality stable. Different species contribute in different ways, but humans..." She paused, trying to find the right words. "Humans were like the oil in the machine. We kept everything running smoothly. The evidence was overwhelming. Human brains worked differently than alien brains. Humans were natural problem solvers. They saw patterns that others missed. They found solutions that others could not imagine, and they refused to give up when things seemed impossible. For thousands of years, humans had been unconsciously fixing problems throughout the galaxy, not with tools or weapons, but with their minds. Just by thinking about problems and wanting to solve them, they had been keeping space-time stable. Now they were gone, and the universe was falling apart. The first major disaster happened in Valorian space. An entire star system simply vanished. Not destroyed, not evacuated, just gone. One day it was there. The next day there was nothing but empty space where 12 planets used to orbit a bright yellow star. The Valorians sent their best scientists to investigate. They found something that made no sense. The space where the star system had been was filled with what they could only describe as holes in reality, gaps where physics did not work properly. When the news reached humanity's settlements, it caused panic. If entire star systems could just disappear, how long before the breakdown reached them? But some humans saw opportunity in the crisis. The Uxty. Valorians, desperate for answers, tried to raid human settlements to steal technology. They thought human science could solve the problem. A fleet of Valorian warships attacked the human colony of New Horizon, hoping to capture human scientists and computers. They had not expected resistance. Commander Bae Jun-sik led the defense of New Horizon. He had been a soldier in the old days before humanity left the Council. He knew how Valorians fought. They were strong and fierce, but they were not creative. "Remember," he told his troops over the radio, "they think like warriors. We think like engineers. Use that." The battle that followed became famous throughout human space. The Valorians brought more ships and bigger weapons, but the humans fought smarter. They used tricks that the Valorians could not predict. They turned asteroids into weapons. They made fake signals that confused enemy sensors. They even used the unstable space around the colony to their advantage. When the Valorian ships tried to use hyperspace to escape, The humans had sabotaged the local space-time fabric. The enemy ships found themselves trapped in a maze of broken physics, unable to jump away or even communicate with their home fleet. The Valorian admiral, a proud warrior named Craxus, was forced to surrender. As human marines boarded his ship, he looked at Commander Bay with something like respect. "How?" he asked simply. Bay smiled. "We think differently than you do. We see problems, and we solve them. You see enemies, and you try to crush them. That's why the galaxy needs us more than it needs you." The news of humanity's victory spread quickly. Other species that had been thinking about attacking human settlements changed their minds. The message was clear. Humanity would defend itself, and they were very good at it. But the breakdown continued to accelerate. Reality storms began tearing through the galactic core. These were areas where the laws of physics simply stopped working. Time moved in circles, gravity pointed in random directions, light bent into impossible shapes. Ancient technologies that had worked for millions of years began to fail. The great communication networks that connected thousands of worlds went silent. The hyperspace beacons that guided ships between stars winked out one by one. On the Council world, High Counselor Vextar stood in his office watching reports of the disasters. He was beginning to understand something that made him feel sick with dread. The humans had not just been members of the Council. They had been the glue that held everything together. Their strange minds, their refusal to accept limitations, their constant tinkering and improving, all of it had been keeping the galaxy stable. "We need them back," he said to his aide, a younger Valorian named Thok. "Sir?" Thok looked confused. "The humans? But they are weak. They are children." Vextar turned away from the window. "No," he said quietly. "We were the children. We never understood what they were really doing for us." He thought about all the times humans had proposed solutions to problems. All the times the Council had dismissed their ideas as too simple or too strange. All the innovations and improvements that humans had made, only to have them ignored or stolen by other species. The humans had been trying to help all along, and the galaxy had treated them like servants. Now half the galaxy was uninhabitable. Billions of beings had died in the reality storms and system failures. Entire civilizations were fleeing their homeworlds, looking for stable space where they could survive. And the only stable space left was around the areas where humans used to live. Vextar made a decision that went against everything his warrior culture believed in. He ordered his ships to prepare for a journey to human space. Not to attack, not to demand tribute, but to ask for help. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. But as he watched another star system die on his screens, he knew it was the only choice left. The galaxy needed humanity back, and they would have to beg for it. In the space between galaxies, human sensors detected the approaching refugee fleets, ships from dozens of species, fleeing the chaos behind them, all heading toward the new human settlements. The same species that had dismissed humans as too young and too weak were now coming to them for salvation. President Seo Jin-woo called an emergency meeting of the human leadership. The decision they made in the next few hours would determine the fate of the galaxy, and perhaps the universe itself. Ambassador Jang Soo-jin stood on the observation deck of New Hope Station, watching the refugee fleets arrive. Ship after ship appeared out of hyperspace, each one carrying survivors from the dying galaxy. Some were huge Valorian warships, their proud hulls scarred by reality storms. Others were delicate Nethri crystal ships that sang softly as they moved through space. All of them were running from the same thing, the collapse of everything they had ever known. "Ma'am," said her aide, Captain Lee Ho-jin, "the first delegation is requesting permission to dock." Jang nodded. "Granted. But keep our defenses ready. Old habits die hard." She had been chosen for this job because she understood both diplomacy and war. The species coming to human space had spent decades treating humanity like children. Some of them had even tried to attack human colonies when the crisis began. Trust would not come easily. The first delegation was led by High Counselor Vexatar himself. The massive Valorian looked smaller somehow, his proud bearing replaced by something that might have been humility. Behind him came representatives from a dozen other species, all looking equally desperate. They met in the main conference room of New Hope Station. The humans sat on one side of a long table, the aliens on the other. For a moment, nobody spoke. The silence stretched uncomfortably as old enemies studied each other. Finally, Vextar stood up. "Ambassador Jang," he began, his voice unusually quiet for a Valorian. "We come to ask for your help." Jang raised an eyebrow. "Your help? Not demand it? Not take it by force?" Vextar's massive head hung low. "We tried force. It failed. Your people are stronger than we thought." "Not stronger," Jang corrected. "Smarter." Behind Vextar, an ancient being that looked like a walking tree began to speak. This was one of the Eternal Watchers, the oldest known species in the galaxy. When it spoke, everyone listened. "Young humans," it said in a voice like wind through leaves, "we come to share truth long hidden. The universe is a fragile thing, held together by conscious thought, by will to survive, by refusal to accept ending." The tree being paused, its ancient eyes focusing on Jang. "Your species has gift, minds that see solutions where others see only problems. For millennia, you have been fixing universe without knowing it." Dr. Choi Ye-jin, who was attending the meeting as humanities science advisor, leaned forward. "You're saying we've been unconsciously maintaining reality?" "More than maintaining," the Eternal Watcher replied. "You have been improving it, making it stronger. Your creativity, your stubbornness, your refusal to accept impossible, these things reshape reality itself." Another alien spoke up. This was the Cathera Queen, her insect-like body clicking as she moved. "My people studied your colonies for years. Wherever humans lived, space became more stable. Problems that had existed for centuries simply disappeared." "And now?" Jang asked, though she already knew the answer. "Now galaxy dies," the Queen replied sadly. "Without human minds to fix what breaks, everything falls apart. Our greatest scientists estimate 6 months before total collapse." The weight of responsibility settled on Yang's shoulders like a heavy cloak. 6 months. 6 months for humanity to decide whether to save the species that had treated them as inferior, or to let the galaxy burn. "What exactly are you asking us to do?" she said. Vexitar stood again. "Return with us. Help us rebuild. Take leadership of new alliance based on equality, not hierarchy." "You want us to be in charge?" Jiang could not hide her surprise. "You want humans to lead the galaxy?" Dr. Choi added. The Eternal Watcher made a sound that might have been laughter. "Not lead. Guide. Show others how to think like humans. How to solve problems instead of accepting them. How to hope when all seems lost." That evening, Yang met with President Seo Jin-woo and the other human leaders in a secure conference room. Outside the windows, more refugee ships were arriving every hour. "They're offering us everything we wanted," said Admiral Kwon Mi-young. "Recognition as equals, representation in government, access to their most advanced technologies." "Because they need us," President Seo replied. "The question is, do we need them?" Dr. Choi pulled up a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red areas marked regions where reality had broken down completely. Yellow areas showed unstable zones where ships could not travel safely. Only small patches of green remained, and most of those were around former human territories. "If we do nothing," she said, "we'll be safe here between galaxies. We can build our own civilization, but billions of intelligent beings will die." "That's not our problem," said General Oh Sung-woo. "They made their choice when they treated us like servants." "Actually," said a new voice, "it is our problem." Everyone turned to see Dr. Park So-min entering the room. She looked exhausted, having spent days studying the data from the refugee ships. "I've been analyzing the collapse pattern," she continued. "It's not stopping at the galaxy's edge. The breakdown is spreading outward into the space between galaxies. Eventually, it will reach us here." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this news. "How long?" President Seo asked. 2 years, maybe 3, Dr. Park replied. The universe itself is becoming unstable. If we don't fix this at the source, nowhere will be safe. President Seo stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see human families going about their daily lives on New Hope Station. Children playing in the parks, scientists working in their laboratories, soldiers training for battles that might never come. All of them depending on him to make the right choice. If we go back, he said without turning around, it has to be on our terms. Complete equality for all species. Human methods and ethics as the foundation for everything we build. And full transparency. No more secrets, no more hidden agendas. They've agreed to all of that, Jiang said. Then we have our answer. President Seo turned back to face the room. We go back. Not because we owe them anything, but because it's the right thing to do. Admiral Quan leaned forward. What about the technical challenges? Even if we can stabilize reality around key systems, we'll need to evacuate millions of beings to safe zones while we work. That will require the largest joint operation in galactic history, Dr. Choi agreed. Every ship, every resource, perfect coordination between species that have never really trusted each other. Then we'd better get started, President Seo said. Time is not on our side. The next morning, Ambassador Jiang met again with the alien delegations. This time the mood was different. Hope mixed with desperation as the refugees waited to hear humanity's decision. We will help you, Jiang announced, but under new rules. This will not be the old Galactic Council with humans as junior members. This will be a true confederation, with all species working together as equals. Vextar actually smiled, showing teeth that could have bitten through steel. What do you need from us? Everything, Jiang replied. Every ship that can still fly. Every scientist who understands galactic physics. Every worker willing to follow human supervision without question. We're going to attempt something that has never been tried before. Which is? The Cathera Queen asked. Dr. Choi stood up, activating a holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. We're going to restart the universe, she said simply. We're going to find the fundamental forces that hold reality together, and we're going to fix them. The room erupted in excited chatter as aliens discussed the proposal in dozens of different languages. Through it all, the Eternal Watcher sat quietly, its ancient eyes focused on the humans. Finally, it spoke. Impossible task, it said. Good. Thing humans specialize in impossible. For the first time in months, Jiang allowed herself to smile. Yes, she said. Yes, we do. The operation would require sacrifices from everyone. Species would have to work together in ways they never had before. Ancient enemies would have to trust each other completely. And through it all, humanity would have to teach an entire galaxy how to think differently. But as Jiang looked around the room at the faces of beings from dozens of worlds, she felt something she had not felt since humanity left the Council. Hope. The universe was broken, but it was not dead, and humans had always been very good at fixing broken things. Captain Nam Hoseok looked out at the strangest fleet that had ever been assembled. His ship, the human destroyer Determination, flew alongside a massive Valorian battleship and a delicate Nethri crystal vessel. Behind them came hundreds of other ships from dozens of species, all working together under human command. 3 months had passed since the refugee crisis began. 3 months of desperate planning, careful negotiations, and hasty training programs. Now they were racing against time itself as reality continued to collapse throughout the galaxy. Captain called his communications officer, Lieutenant Young Min Woo. We're getting reports from the advance teams. Nam walked over to study the incoming data. The mission was complex beyond anything ever attempted. Teams of mixed species crews were working to stabilize critical points throughout the galaxy, while massive evacuation fleets moved entire populations to safe zones. It was working, but barely. The Valorian human team at Nexus Station reports success, Young continued. They've managed to reinforce the hyperspace junction, but they lost 2 ships in the process. Nam nodded grimly. The work was dangerous. Reality storms could appear. without warning, tearing ships apart at the molecular level. Gravity wells might suddenly reverse direction. Time itself could slow down or speed up unpredictably. But somehow, the mixed crews were adapting. Humans provided the creative thinking and problem-solving abilities. Alien species contributed their specialized knowledge and resources. Together, they were accomplishing things that neither could do alone. "Sir," Jung said, "we're approaching the broken zone." Nam looked ahead at their destination. The broken zone was what the scientists called the area around the galactic core, where reality had completely collapsed. Space there was like a shattered mirror, reflecting impossible images and obeying no known laws of physics. Somewhere in that chaos was the central node, the theoretical point where all galactic forces intersected. If Dr. An Kyung-mi was right, restoring that node could stabilize the entire galaxy, but first they had to find it. "All ships, this is Captain Nam," he broadcast to the fleet. "Remember your training. Humans provide intuition and creativity. Our alien partners provide specialized knowledge and resources. Trust each other completely or we all die." Back at the main operations center on New Hope Station, engineer Song Yu-jin monitored dozens of similar missions throughout the galaxy. Her job was to adapt human technology to work with alien physiology, and it was proving more challenging than anyone had expected. "Dr. Park," she called to the chief scientist. "The Nethri are having trouble with the neural interfaces again." Dr. Park So-min hurried over to examine the data. The Nethri were crystalline beings who thought in harmonic frequencies rather than electrical impulses. Getting their minds to synchronize with human brain patterns was like trying to make music and mathematics work together. "Try adjusting the resonance frequency," Dr. Park suggested, "and remind them that they need to think more like humans. Focus on solutions, not problems." This was the key insight that had made the entire operation possible. Dr. An Kyung-mi had discovered that other species could contribute to universal stability, but only if they learned to think differently. They had to abandon their rigid, specialized thinking patterns and become more flexible, more creative, more human. It was not easy. The Valorians, with their warrior culture, struggled to see problems as puzzles to solve rather than enemies to defeat. The Nethri had to learn to think in linear time instead of their natural harmonic cycles. Even the ancient Eternal Watchers had to adjust their thinking from observing to actively participating, but gradually, it was working. On the bridge of his ship, Captain Nam watched as his mixed crew worked together to navigate the broken zone. His pilot was a young Kythera named Click Speaker of Wisdom, whose insect-like reflexes were perfect for dodging reality anomalies. His navigator was a Valorian warrior called Thane Gornax, who had learned to use human tactical thinking to plot courses through impossible space. "Contact ahead," reported his sensor operator, a Nethri crystal named Harmony of Stars. "It matches the theoretical profile for the central node." Nam looked at the main screen. What he saw defied description. The central node appeared to be a sphere of pure possibility, constantly shifting between different states of existence. Sometimes it looked like a star. Sometimes it looked like a black hole. Sometimes it looked like nothing at all. "All teams, prepare for final approach," Nam ordered. "Remember, this has never been attempted before. We're going to try to restart the fundamental forces that hold the galaxy together. If we fail..." He did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what failure meant. The complete breakdown of reality, the death of every thinking being in the galaxy. "Sir," Click Speaker of Wisdom buzzed anxiously, "my people say this is an impossible task." Nam smiled. "Good thing we have humans on the team. We specialize in impossible." Around the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Mixed crews working together to stabilize critical points. Evacuation fleets racing to save populations from collapsing systems. Scientists from dozens of species sharing knowledge and resources under human coordination. And slowly, gradually, the tide began to turn. Dr. An Kyung-mi had made the crucial discovery just weeks before the final operation. She had been studying the neural patterns of different species, trying to understand how consciousness affected reality. "It's about perspective," she had explained to the assembled leaders. Humans see problems and immediately start thinking of solutions. Most other species see problems and try to understand them or accept them, but the universe responds to intention and will, not just understanding. So we need to teach them to think like us? President Seo had asked. Not exactly like us, Dr. An had replied. They need to keep their specialized knowledge and abilities, but they need to add human-style problem-solving to their thinking. They need to believe that any problem can be solved if you just try hard enough and refuse to give up. Now that theory was being put to the test on the largest scale imaginable. Fleet Admiral Park Jung-soo coordinated the galaxy-spanning operation from his flagship, the massive human dreadnought Unity. Around him, holographic displays showed the status of hundreds of missions throughout the galaxy. Admiral, his aide reported, all teams are in position. The central node operation is ready to begin. Park took a deep breath. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. If the operation succeeded, they would restore stability to the galaxy and create a new form of civilization based on cooperation and equality. If it failed, reality itself would collapse. All ships, he broadcast on all frequencies. This is Admiral Park. In 30 seconds, we attempt to restart the cosmic engines that maintain our universe. Every ship, every mind, every civilization must work together in perfect harmony. He paused, thinking about the long journey that had brought them to this point. Humanity's departure from the Council, the discovery of their crucial role in maintaining reality, the desperate alliance formed in the face of universal collapse. Whatever happens, he continued, remember that we tried. We refused to accept defeat. We chose to fight for something better, even when the odds seemed impossible. The countdown began. Throughout the galaxy, thousands of ships took their positions around critical nodes. Millions of beings from dozens of species prepared to synchronize their thoughts and intentions. At the central node, Captain Nam watched as his mixed crew prepared for the most dangerous part of the mission. They would have to enter the sphere of pure possibility and manually restart the fundamental forces of reality. 10 seconds, he announced. Remember, we think as one. Human creativity guided by alien knowledge. Solutions, not problems. Hope, not fear. The countdown reached 0. And across the galaxy, in perfect synchronization, every ship and every mind reached out together to touch the very foundations of existence. What happened next would be remembered for thousands of years as the moment when the universe itself was reborn.